there was a lot of partying, but there was a lot of great music made in that one as well. I remember Mark pretending to shoot himself in the foot while we were mixing the record, I think, with an air pistol.
Welcome to the XS Noize Podcast, the chart-topping music interview show. I'm your host, Mark Millar, and today I'm joined by Rick McMurray, drummer and founding member of Ash. If you missed our last episode, I was joined by Finn O'Brien, frontman of the Jacks, so be sure to check it out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Ash are celebrating over 30 years together with their brand new album, Ad Astra. From teenage beginnings in Downpatrick to Glastonbury stages and global tours, the band have never lost their spark, ambition, or sense of fun. In this conversation, Rick looks back on the band's pandemic reset, the thrill of playing together again, the friendship that's kept Ash together for 3 decades, and why after all these years, they're still lifers, not part-timers. So let's get into it. This is Rick McMurray from Ash on the XS Noize Podcast. So hi Rick, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Good evening, how you doing?
Good evening.
Oh yeah, what time is it? Yeah. It's been one of those weeks, Mark.
I'm sure. So as you're back with album number 9, the rocket-fueled, adventurous and playful Ad Astra. So Ad Astra has arrived 2 years after Race the Night. Was that quick turnaround deliberate?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's been something that's been like our mission ever since we went back to albums after the A to Z releases where we did like 26 singles in 1 year. We're just like, if we're going to do albums, let's try and get in a bit of a roll with it. But there's just been, like, for whatever reason, we haven't managed that. We didn't manage that for like a decade. It was like not just because of COVID, but there's been just like crazy things happening along the way. But that's definitely been the aim, and I think this is the first time we've actually managed to do it. I mean, I think even 2 years, we're just like, is this too long? But it's it's never dull. That's the thing. I mean, like on the last record, Race the Night, we sort of, if anyone saw us at any of the in-store things we did, especially the ones that Simon Williams from Fierce Panda was hosting, he did like a bit of a Q&A thing, and at that point he was raving about us like doing this, like sort of like he was started talking about the next album at that point. It's going, I've heard this like half the album, and it's like kind of like Ash like getting away from guitars. It's a bit more experimental, and it's really pop, and it's like interesting. He was well into it, and we were as well. That's as far as we were concerned at the time, that was what was going to follow up Race the Night. Ad Astra is not that record. I think after the dust settled after Race the Night, we're sort of like, it had sort of like been received so well. We're just like, do we want to, after we sort of like built things up like really nicely, do we want to like suddenly alienate people with a record that's as far from Race the Night as we could possibly get? So it almost feels like it was like, right, well, maybe we need to do something that's like a sort of a bit of a stepping stone. There's a few songs kicking around that felt like they didn't belong to that record as well, and I don't know, it feels like this is a kind of like a stepping stone between the two. But to be honest, like during the writing process, a lot of the time we were going like, what is this record? And it sort of slowly revealed itself to us more than anything else. There was a few like kind of happy accidents that happened along the way, and it was like, okay, now we know what we're making. Sort of like quite late in the day as well, so it was like it was an interesting process for sure. It kind of a little bit fun to kind of be in the dark as to what you're doing and letting the album kind of like reveal itself to you. But the end product, I think for me, weirdly, like either despite that or because of that, is it almost feels like more of a coherent record to me than the last album, which is like quite surprising.
Yeah, and there's lots going on. There's all sorts of different sounds, different genres.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the tracks. Tim said about the track "Give Me Back My World." He said it rages against chaos and loss of control. So, do you see the record as defiant or hopeful?
It's kind of like equal parts defiant and hopeful. I mean, it's like, I don't know, we're making this record and what feels like, I guess on the last record it was like almost like, coming out of COVID and a bit of like, just like, thank God, we've got, we've got a bit of the world back. And in fact, that's probably the reason why Give Me Back My World was left off that album, because it just felt like thematically we just wanted to be like, quite uplifting, and it felt like, maybe that was like kind of like, we didn't want to take people back to those years of chaos. But in a weird way, it almost feels like that song's like more fitting. So it's like that kind of like reflects that sort of more of the uncertainty of where we are right now. But then, there's other songs on there like Ad Astra, which, it's almost like it's kind of like reflecting a bit more of a hopeful kind of side. It's like, at one point I was talking about, the last time we touched on the sort of sci-fi element of the band so much was, around the time of Girl From Mars. And that was like, like positive. It's almost like take me to the stars at the minute because I can't handle this planet.
Well, funny you mentioned Girl From Mars. When I've spoken to Tim before, I always tease him about the urban myth that Girl From Mars was originally called Girl From Ards, which he always denies. But there's a girl speaking at the start of Hallion saying, "What are you slabbering about, you wee dick?" And that definitely sounds like she's from Ards. Was that deliberate?
Well, I mean, it was deliberate having her, but it's I wouldn't read too much into it. I think Tim would be horrified if he thought that was going to bring up that question again. But yeah, like yeah.
No, I'm only joking. I mean, it could be anybody, obviously, from the country.
It always comes up from time to time, and Tim does get quite enraged by it, but I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. But Hallion, it is a great track, and it is funny at the start. What inspired that track?
I don't know. It's just like, I mean, Tim just sort of came up with that. That was like sort of like, here's a song. It was like pretty much like completely written by the time we heard it. So it was just like, it was its own thing. But interestingly, I was actually talking to someone else about it. They were like, "Do you know what the definition of Hallion is?" And I was like, "Actually, I don't know the strict definition." But they were also like, someone from back home actually, but they're living in northeast of Scotland, and they were like, it's not really a thing here. So it's like, be interesting to see how many people like will get it and pick it on. And there was a lot of conversations about whether we did have that voice at the start of Hallion or not. And it's like, it's kind of hilarious, but it's like, is anyone outside of the Northern Ireland bubble gonna understand it? Or maybe we'll just spread that that a little bit of culture a little bit further.
You mentioned we were talking about Give Me Back My World, which was held back, but also on the album you have Which One Do You Want, which dates back to the New York days. So why include that on the album this time?
Well, it's sort of like, it almost feels like that's kind of like, this is probably putting hindsight on it. It feels more like quite a centerpiece to me, but at the time, I mean, it definitely felt like it didn't, even though it's, guitar-y, it feels like quite unique for us. I don't think we've written anything quite like that in the past. So it was like, felt like it didn't belong on Race the Night, and certainly didn't belong on, what's coming after Ad Astra. So it was like, almost like, it was like, well, this sort of like, this idea of sort of like having this album to sort of bridge or be the part two of a trilogy. It feels like that's like a key element of sort of like, okay, this album can be a home for that, and it's almost like a transition between like two different worlds that Ash exists in as well. But I think it's one of my favorite songs, not just of this record, but like, I think it's one of the best that Tim's written. It's just like,
yeah,
it's got something to it, and it's like, it's interesting. It's definitely a bit of a departure for us. So I'm really glad that we found a proper home for it.
No, it's a fantastic track. And I'm talking about departures, fun people. It's one of your wildest tracks, probably. How did that come together, and how did Graham Coxon get involved?
Yeah, well, I think with Tim sort of like written, we spent a lot of time on that in the rehearsal room, and it was just mad. It's just like a bonkers riff, but I don't know. Tim's, I guess he's always had a track record. I mean, it doesn't sound anything like Lose Control of 1977, but that's another one where it's like this really kind of like discordant weirdness, and somehow Tim manages to find that kind of like pop melody or pop just hook of some sort that kind of like brings it back around to that kind of like the Ash sound. So it's like, and I think it's kind of like, I'd say it's quite a drummery song as well. That one, like
Yeah.
not so much, but it's just like having that riff, which is like it's like a 5 note kind of weird thing is going over the bar line, so it feels like it's constantly evolving. And yeah, it was quite funny in rehearsals because like the other two didn't know how to play it, and I'm just like, well, it's just in five, and he's just like, this is a perfect drummer thing. I was like, trying to teach him where it resolves and where the especially the end of it because it goes like it kind of does that five thing like for a longer period. It's just this is probably really boring for a podcast, but it definitely tickled the drummer in me. You know, going like, this is I'm showing the rest of the band how to play this song.
But then why do you think this song needs Graham Coxon's guitar?
I think there's something about it. It's like it's like I think especially when sort of like Graham Coxon's like songwriting and Blur when they went a little bit kind of weirder. It's got something of that in it because of that riff. So it was like I think like since Tim moved back to London, he sort of like reconnected with Graham quite a bit, and they seemed to hang out quite a bit. So he was like, "Oh, I was thinking of asking him to play in this," and then we got his vocal on it, which is his voice is like you hear one word out of his gob, and you know it's him. It's like
Yeah.
and just like that. It's sort of like that. I guess the kind of thematically the fun people is like are we talking about fun people here or are we talking about people that do your bleeding head in? Do you know what I mean? His voice has got like sort of that sort of, is he annoyed or is he having fun? I don't know. It's like it's just perfect for it. So yeah, it's just like I don't know. It's like I guess it just seemed like it had his DNA on it, and we asked him and he was very happy to be asked. So yeah, it's great having him on it.
Yeah, as I said at the start, on listening to the album the first time, there was lots of surprises, but I wasn't as much surprised as when I heard Jump the Line. It was completely unexpected. Where did the idea come to cover that track?
Well, that's it's something that's been like our like outro music live
That's
for
right.
quite a while. We'd sort of just play the Harry Belafonte version that everyone knows, and it's like kind of just like a feel good, like we've just finished the set and people are just leaving to that kind of feel good song. And it's like, yeah, it always felt like a little bit of just a nice moment, a nice way to wrap up an evening's live entertainment. So, and then Tim was like, "Oh, maybe you should do a cover of this and like do it in the style of the Ramones." And it was like, this is either going to work or it's going to be a complete disaster. But we took it into the studio and started playing around it, and it was just like, oh, this is just like got Ash DNA all over it. It's like a really real fun moment. And the minute we started playing it live as well, I think we started playing it on the Darkness tour earlier this year, and within a couple of bars, people just completely get it. It's just like it feels like it's like a moment in the set. And whether people know us or don't, they know that song instantly and they just get totally into it. So it's like, yeah, it's perfect for us, I think.
Yeah, and it just fits in seamless on the album.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's a great moment, and I have to say I was quite daunted about having to play it live as well because that song doesn't hang about. It's pretty up tempo, and it's like I think as a 20-year-old that was definitely in my wheelhouse. But we're coming to play it. I need to get my chops together to get up to these tempos again. So yeah, but it's turned out that apparently in my late 40s, early 50s, I'm up to it, which is a pretty good feeling.
Songs like My Favorite Ghost and Keep Dreaming bring a reflective side to the album. Was that balance key?
Yeah, I think yeah. Because going back to it being like a sort of bridge between the albums, it's like it felt like that's kind of eclecticism was kind of like the key to sort of like have that. It's like we're kind of like there's moments like I'd say maybe like Keep Dreaming's like something that maybe could have existed on Race the Night, probably more than most of the songs on the album. But then stuff like maybe not My Favorite Ghost, but stuff like having a brain fart on a song title that hasn't been released yet. But there's other stuff on you. Once you hear it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Deadly Love, that's it. when you hear that, that's kind of like a pointer as to where we're going. So it's like, because we're trying to bridge these two worlds, it felt like, it's the right time to kind of lean into a bit more eclecticism rather than sort of like try and make an album with one specific identity. And I think that, when people hear this entire trilogy together, it will kind of like, the whole thing will make sense and how it hangs together.
You mean trilogy being even, there's another one coming next?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And have you already started that?
Well, that's good. That's like like the when I was talking about the sort of like the follow up to Race the Night being this kind of like more synthy record. That's going to be, well. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but that's the plan. That's going to be the next record. It was, it turned out that we maybe thought that wasn't what we should do next. So it's like that's been sort of like put nice, and this Ad Astra is like the kind of like the second part of this kind of 3-part, which will hopefully kind of like tie together sort of like thematically.
No, that's good, because I'd heard about the Cynthia album and I thought that was completely scrapped altogether. So,
oh no, I mean, it's like it's not because we don't want to do it. It's like we kind of like, it's like this is kind of like the preparation for where we're going to go next. At least that's the way we're looking at it.
Rick, I should never split up or reunited. You just kept going. What's kept the spark alive in just over 30 years of Ash?
If I could figure that out, I'd probably write a book about it. It's weird to say. It doesn't feel like 30 years, but it's like, when you're kind of hitting those milestones, you sort of like, you start having these weird thoughts. Like, it's like 30 years before our first album was like, the Beatles' second record, stuff like that just pops into your head, which is just mad. But back then as kids, you kind of think, well, that's, 30 years ago, that's like ancient history, whatever. But, when you're coming 30 years from your sort of debut releases, it's like, wow, this doesn't feel like a long time. And it's like, I don't know, I think we feel like we've still got a lot to say. It's like we got a lot to do. And, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. It's like every experience, like every album is a different experience. And I think it's just a joy to see where we, for us, like, where are we going next with this? And, I maybe point back to, I know when we first signed our first deal, I remember our manager saying to us as well, look, you can sign for, I can go out and find you like a massive advance, but then you're going to have all this pressure on you. And if it doesn't work in the first record, then, you're going to be dropped, and then it's kind of game over from that point. Or we can sign like a small deal if you want to make this thing a career rather than just like a, one album and done. And of course, that's what we chose. And I think that was, ever since that point, having this as a kind of career is what we wanted. But it's like there's been a lot of ups and downs over the years, and some things maybe haven't been as successful as we predicted. But I think I don't think, certainly from my point of view, I don't think songwriting's ever sort of dipped, or our enthusiasm for what we're doing next has ever dipped. It's like we've never gone into an album where we're not like fully committed to it. So yeah.
I read that you've called yourselves lifers, not part timers. So do you take pride in outlasting your 90s peers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, we did a festival about a month ago, and it was with Mannix and Charlatans, and it's like, I think it was James Dean Bradfield was just walking past, going like, it's kind of amazing. This is like this entire lineup, like no one split up. No band sort of like gone, this is the end, and then reformed or anything like that. We just all three of us have just gone through no matter what. And it's sort of like when you see other bands sort of like, it's like going like, well, this is our final tour. I'm not going to point any fingers, but we're done now. We're splitting up. And it's like 2 years later, it's like, oh, surprise, surprise, you're back together again. It's almost like a career move to sell tickets. And I don't know. We're not the sort of people that would feel comfortable being that calculating about it.
You once said if AI analysed Ash's catalogue, you said it wouldn't know what the fuck to do next. So what does that say about the band's evolution musically?
I think AI, that could be said of any career. I think that's more a criticism of AI, because it can only synthesize what it's heard in the past. It can't. It doesn't cater for the new or the inspiration. It's just yeah, it just like, you know, it's like, I remember when I first heard, like, there was like, oh yeah, AI's written a Beatles song. And then you listen to it and you go, well, that bit's from there, that bit's from there, that bit's from there. And it's just like, you're just, you know, you're just cutting something up and pasting it back together, really. I was referencing that in terms of not just, you know, Ash's career, but any band, that's all it could do. It's just, you know, it's a very mechanical thing. It doesn't have any inspiration. But yeah, I mean, like in the past, you know, the eclecticism of the band. I don't know whether it's like kind of maybe I don't know, it's hurt her career in terms of sales, where people go, well, they're this thing at the minute, and then they're going to be something else next. And we always like just, you know, and certainly Tim as a songwriter shoots off in a million directions at once. And there has been times where we've kind of like reined that in, or tried to rein that in a bit. Specifically, I'd say more so on the last album than at any other point. But to be honest, I think it's quite nice going back to, like, you know, weirdly to me, it doesn't feel like a chameleon of an album, this one, even though it is shooting off in different direction. And I think that's maybe because I think as we were making it, there was a lot of uncertainty as what it was actually going to be, and it sort of like it almost like revealed itself as the writing process took place. You know, it wasn't until, you know, one of the final songs written for it was Ad Astra, the title track, and I think once we got that in place, and it was like, right, to the stars, it's like, you know, a little bit of a nod to Girl From Mars and like the lyric and that, but it's also, you know, well, I guess you know, it's kind of the first time we've touched on that sort of like more spacey sci-fi kind of thing, and we kind of really leaned into that with the imagery of it, and it kind of, to me, that felt like it gave it like an overall identity, even though sort of musically it's going in quite a lot of directions. It feels like that song kind of like ties a lot of loose ends together with it. And I think it's like I was just writing something about it earlier on today. The record company asked me to sort of write a few words about that track in particular, and it's like I was just sort of like, I wasn't listening to it at the time, but it was just like sort of thinking about it and just going like, you know, this is one of Tim's like best songs, and just like it's just going like it's like. So I was getting quite emotional about it, going, this is like I've been in a band for like, you know, 33 years with this guy, and, you know, he's still giving me those feels. You know, it's just like, and it feels like something he's never done before, you know, in terms of the subject. I mean, I guess the subject, you know, is like, you'll find out when, I guess you've heard the song, but a lot of people
Yeah.
won't at this point, but it's sort of like, it kind of, it's all like, to me, that song's almost like it's almost got this spiritual aspect to it, you know, using sci-fi. You know, it's outer space, but it's also, you know, exploring like where you're going as a person and inner space. And yeah, it's as you can probably tell, it's resonated with me quite heavily, and that's, you know, that's pretty amazing after, you know, 30 years in a band with someone, and you'd still get that, you know, just like quite overawed by their songwriting ability, you know. Well, it was an interesting song as well, because it was, when we were recording the drums and we were doing Fun People, Tim was like, "Oh, I've got this other riff," and he played it to me, and he was going like, "Oh, we maybe like throw it in as like a cool like outro bit to Fun People," but it felt like it was like, I was like, this is great," but it completely felt like it was in a different universe to Fun People. And I was like, this would make a great track by itself. So he was like, right, okay, let's see. He was just like, well, just record some drums to it anyway. So I played drums to it for like 20 minutes, and he just took all the parts and assembled it after recording, and then wrote the song kind of around it. And yeah, it was just mad. Like the next thing I know, he sent me this like little clip of Graham Coxon playing guitar on it, which was the first I knew of. It was just like mind blowing. Like Graham is making these like insane outer space kind of noises on it, and then he throws his glasses across across the studio desk and bursts out laughing. It's just like wow, okay, this has turned into something that's even better than I thought it maybe could have been. So yeah, it's like a few little happy accidents with that, and that's what's, you know, that's the inspiration that the record needed. And just as I say, it's just like it ties the whole thing up for me thematically as well.
You've got a huge Ad Astra tour coming. How are you feeling about getting back out on the road and playing these songs live?
I'm really looking forward to it, actually. You know, it's like the whole summer we've been in those sort of like the festival seasons kind of blurred into like launch for the album. So it's been a manic sort of. There's been so much back and forth at the minute. I'm just looking forward to getting like okay, here's a string of dates, right? Let's we can get in a row. It's like I think it's all the traveling back and forth is the most tiring kind of aspect of it. So yeah, looking forward to just like getting a load of dates under the belt. And I think the tour's set up quite nicely as well because we've got like a couple of weeks in November, a little bit of a break. We've got the Irish tour after that, and then we've got like a little bit of time off, and then we got stuff in February as well. So there's no massive chunks of touring as well. So it means that we'll stay relatively fresh for it. We can kind of like take it in a little bit more because I know on the Race the Night tour and in the UK, it felt like that was over in a flash. I was barely remember it, And it was nice. I think we did the UK tour, then we went out to Europe, and then we come back and finished in Ireland. It was nice to have. It was nice to sort of like come back to the Irish stuff and like get a lot of songs from the new album back then. But it's yeah, I mean it's definitely become a thing over the last few years where maybe 10, 15 years ago would be quite self-conscious about putting so much new stuff in the set. But I think the fans as well got to the point where they're like, well, you know what? We might never get to hear these songs live after this tour, so we just kind of lean into it. I mean, we played like 6 new songs off a record that's not even been released last week, and looking forward to doing more of the same very soon. But again,
how did it go down? How did those songs go down?
oh, amazing, amazing. Yeah, it was like it was a it was a pretty intense experience because we just like we hadn't played like 3 of them, 4 and counting the Graham Coxon song we did. We hadn't played any of them like until like 2 days before the Scala. So it was like kind of a lot of pressure. But I don't know, I think the longer we do this, those are the moments you kind of live for. It's just like, am I up to this? And it was just like it's a pretty intense kind of level of concentration. But and it was like just collapsed for about a week after. I think only just recovering now. But I don't know. Those are the kind of moments you live for.
Rick, this here part is called Quickfire Album Memories. I'll name an Ash record and you just tell me just first story or memory that comes to mind when I mention it. Might as well start off back in 1994 with the mini album Trailer.
Oh, I mean, that was a steep learning curve. We've been around a couple of years at that point, but it's like going into professional studio and learning how much we sucked was definitely a big learning. I mean, we'd not even we'd done gigs at that. We'd done like quite a few gigs, but we hadn't really toured. It was like a lot of one-offs in between, like sort of like school holidays and bits and pieces. We'd probably maybe done maybe 5, 7 gigs on a tour maximum. So yeah, it was learning like the reality of how you sound and how you want to sound. That was a learning style. I think the other thing I remember is Tim playing his guitar with spoons at one point.
Yeah, and there were some early fan favourites on there, like Jack Names the Planets and Uncle Pat. I love Uncle Pat.
Yeah,
I think it was used in an ad, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I think it was like the Heineken ad back in the day, yeah. Which is funny because I think when we wrote that song, I remember we're in the rehearsal room and we were all just like, "Wow, this sounds like it could be a great beer commercial," and then it became one.
We'll skip the Nuclear Sounds, 1998. Darker, heavier, more experimental follow up to 1977.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that pops into mind. I mean, that record was a little bit fraught making it, but it was there was some great moments as well. But we were in the studio for a lot longer than we counted. In fact, it rolled into the start of festival season, and I remember leaving the studio for a weekend on the tour bus, went and did, I can't remember what the festivals were, we were away for like 3 days, back to the studio, and Owen Morris hadn't slept and had completely remixed like 2 tracks and invited half the pub there, and he was seeing bats coming out of the wall as well. So that was, that's the first thing that pops into mind with that.
Free All Angels from 2001.
We did kind of like a great time. Like it kind of recorded in 2 parts, that record. We did a few weeks in Bath at Van Morrison's studio, and then the rest was done in like the south of Spain. So we actually kept one of the bars open out of holiday season down there for the amount of time. But there was there was a lot of partying, but there was a lot of great music made in that one as well. I remember Mark pretending to shoot himself in the foot while we were mixing the record. I think
What happened?
with an air pistol. I don't know. He was quite into air pistols, and he was quite into video cameras. So he was like, yeah. I don't know if the footage ever got released, but I think he was trying to like. I think he was trying to prank Charlotte. I'm not sure if it worked or not. I don't know if she believed him. It was a valiant effort.
Talking about videoing things that just come into my head. You guys actually made like some sort of horror film with Coldplay back in the day, didn't you?
Yeah, it was Coldplay. I think Dave Grohl was in it. Jimmy Nesbitt was in it. Moby was in it.
Jimmy Nesbitt was in it.
Yeah, of course he was. But,
Gets everywhere.
I know. What a man. But yeah, it was like I think we were doing a lot of support tours in America, and we had obviously when you're supporting, there's a big chunk of the day where you're just sitting around waiting to do something, and then you're finished pretty early. And I think it was a mate of ours like was started sending scripts over, and then it just sort of it spiraled out of control. I think it was quite a short thing, and then it was like, oh well, we're doing a festival with the Foo Fighters the next day or whatever. And he'd go off and he'd write them into the script. So he was just writing everyone in, and it just spiraled out of control and never got finished. But I think there's still like a few bits of it up on YouTube somewhere. It's been some of it's being leaked out there. So
I'll
yeah,
have to have a look.
there has been like various talks of like how do we wrap this up, but whether anyone's got the will to actually going to need another massive rewrite to actually finish it. So whether it'll see the light of day, I don't know.
Last one we'll talk about Kablammo. It was your return to album making after 8 years.
That was an interesting time because it was like, we were very conscious that we had said that we weren't going to do any more albums. Like I guess it was like 5 years before that came out. The A to Z's experience, it was fun, but it's like it almost clicked, but not quite. And then it was almost like sort of after that wild sort of like I guess the period from about like 2006 to 2010, 11, whereas the death of the album was being predicted, and that turned out to not quite be the case. I think that we were up for experimenting and sort of like getting on board with it's like the internet was a fact of life, and it was like how can we use this creatively to move with the times. But then it was like no one could have predicted the rise of vinyl again. So I guess when we went back to it, it felt like okay, one, if we're going back to this, we got to make this album. We got to justify going back to it as well. So like to me, that album feels like that's when we're sort of like we're really thinking in terms of albums and trying to make it coherent. Because like sort of looking back on, you look back at 1977 or Free All Angels, they were great records, but again, there's like kind of like there's a lot of disparate styles going on at once. Whereas we were like, right, well, let's try and make this, give this a real kind of identity to it. And we were also is kind of probably the first time where we kind of like because of that we were looking back at what we'd done before. It's like we were always very much right. We've done that. Move on. Next album. What's going back? This was the first time we sort of look back and going like, right, well, these are the records that are the benchmarks of our career, and this is what we got to live up to. So that was, there was a lot of focus on that record. I think we did like quite extensive demos, which we hadn't done for a long time. We got our own studio on the A to Z stuff, and we were enjoying doing like the kind of off the cuff, kind of like let's not overthink stuff. Let's just write it. Let's record it fresh, and try and get it out as soon as possible. So the Kablammo was almost the antidote to that, if you like, where we're like, right, we got a lot to live up to here. We're going back in our word. We got to really kind of dig deep. And we wrote a lot of songs for that. And there's still quite a few that didn't get released as well. So maybe at some point they'll see the light of day. Who knows? But I think there's some really good stuff that was left off that as well. But yeah, be interesting. Maybe there'll be an expanded edition at some point.
If someone wanted to understand the music of Ash who had never heard the band before, which 5 songs should they start with?
I would say Girl From Ards, I think, would be an obvious place to start. Maybe like Goldfinger, something like that. I think Goldfinger for me is one of my favorites. I think that was for me, that was a point where things sort of like took on more of a like their own identity. I think it's quite a weird song, structurally and from a musical point of view. But I think just like in terms of how we were perceived as well, I think like very much the early days it was like very punk pop or Goldfinger's like kind of like I was excited about that one because I think it was like we maybe have at the time confounded people's expectation of what the band was. And it was like pushed us into new territory. And then I don't know, maybe like Shining Light would be another one. Orpheus is a bit of the rock side, and then I don't know, fifth one. There's I'd maybe give them something off the new album, just as maybe Deadly Love. So that's like kind of another side of the band that maybe those others don't cover as well.
Good choices. And sort of keeping on the sort of space sort of theme, Ad Astra. If you could put one Ash song in a capsule for aliens to discover, what song would that be?
Where do we go? Where I don't know. I
Girl
mean,
From Mars, would that
well,
be
I mean,
the obvious?
I was going to say Girl from Mars would be the obvious choice, but that's already been that was used by NASA for a while as their hold music for about I think
Right?
I don't know for how long, but if you phoned up NASA like at some point like after 1995 for about a year, I think you would if you were putting hold, Girl from Mars would have been the music. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to put the aliens in hold, it's like, yeah, hang on, Earth's not ready for you. Listen to this.
Okay. Which Ash song best sums up your drumming?
I don't know, like probably maybe something like "Life Less Ordinary," which is like pretty frenetic, not too flashy. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been asked that. An interesting question, but
There you go.
I'll be more interested in what you would have thought. You don't have to answer, Ian.
But
Yeah.
Life Less Ordinary is amazing. Yeah, brilliant track. Love that video and everything about that song, because it wasn't, from what I remember, it wasn't, in fact, it was on the second album, wasn't it? It was on
No,
the
it wasn't.
soundtrack. In
It
fact,
was on. It was on the soundtrack to the film, but it was. I think it was maybe on like was it on the American release of Nuclear Sounds, but it was kind of one of those in between songs that never had a home. It's almost like kind of regret not putting on Nuclear Sounds as well in a way, but then it sort of it maybe doesn't fit into the sort of like the Heart of Darkness record that became anyway. So it might have been quite an outlier. But yeah, it's so I remember probably back then we were probably quite excited to have a single that never made an album like Suede had Stay Together and stuff. I
yeah.
think it was quite a thing back then. That's like the one example I can think of. But
Oasis had Whatever.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and yes, we'd Stay Together, which they hate that song. I love it.
that's brilliant.
Yeah, they disown it. Don't understand
Yeah,
it.
so weird.
Music is often the soundtrack to our lives. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you personally?
It's a close run thing. I mean, I'd say maybe Paranoid by Black Sabbath, which I think is a bit of a weird choice because I wasn't even born when that was released. But I think I've been through like a big like, and not just like since Ozzy passed away, but over the last sort of 5 years of sort of been down a bit of a dark like Black Sabbath kind of trip, and just sort of realizing how much that informed like who I was or as a teenager and who I became as well. So in terms of that. That's definitely like a formative album for me for sure. In terms of like stuff from my own generation, it was like Nevermind was like a huge thing at the time. But I think these days it was weird because at the time I never really gave Soundgarden that much time. But I think that to me is the record I'm going to be more likely to gravitate towards. Like Bad Motorfinger or Super Unknown. And then, well, just like even just playing with Graham Coxon, it's just like it's just a kind of like led me to reflect, how much Blur kind of meant to me at the time as well, because that was, it was kind of weird because we were produced by Owen Morris, and there was like a whole Blur versus Oasis thing. But you sort of look back and you go like they were a really interesting band, and sort of hearing Graham talk about music and what he's into, you're just going like, things could have been so different in the 90s.
Yeah,
You know, because I think with the Oasis thing, it very much became, you know, it was almost like a rerun of the Beatles versus the Stones thing. But you actually listen to, you know, what influenced Blur and stuff. They were coming from some weird places, and I think with the production of it, especially, you know, I guess there's sort of like middle period, like Park Life and Great Escape and stuff, where it became very much pop. It was almost that they were maybe a little bit molded into this pop thing, but I think their influences were coming like a lot more left field than they ever let on.
my favorite Blur album's actually the first one, Leisure.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, I think like Park Life, you know, it's like I was thinking about this the other day, just going like, you know, it's almost like it's like Noel Gallagher was like listening to his parents' record collection, whereas like the Blur stuff was like they were listening to stuff they grew up on rather than the previous generation stuff. And then they kind of synthesized it into something that was uniquely their own. Whereas the Oasis stuff is definitely like harks back a lot more to a specific, I guess, you know, time and place. That's not a
Exactly.
criticism of, you know, of either side. I think, you know, each has their place, but I think, you know, as a musician, I think there's a lot more to listen to on the Blur stuff. There's a lot more layers to it. There's a lot more to kind of dive into. I just, you know, even the idea of, you know, writing an album, going like this is what, you know, this is what, you know, it's a very English record, but to go out and write, you know, I'm talking about Park Life, but to go out and write a record that's like this is what life's like. No, it's like, you know, it shows ambition if nothing else. You know what I mean? It's like, and you know, I think, you know, that resonates with a lot of people. You know, it's like, yeah, sure.
If you could relive one musical moment from your career so far, what would it be?
That's been good. I mean, there's been quite a few moments, but I don't really dwell on the past that much. I think we've had a couple of incredible musical moments just playing with guests in the last year. Not, you know, obviously Graham Coxon last week has been a like little trip, and it's just like, you know, he's just a unique individual. You know, and I think it's like he plays the guitar and he thinks about music with his entire personality. And in a very different way. The other person we played with this year was Eric Bell from Thin Lizzy, who we played with in Belfast last month. And in a, you know, in a very different way, he's kind of the same. You
Really?
know, it's like, and those moments, it's like, I don't know, they meant quite a lot to me. You know, it's like I just like kind of feel like really kind of privileged to have had those experiences. And they'll both stick with me for well, forever, I think. But you know, like more so. I mean, we've had a fair share of guests with us over time, but I don't know whether it's where I am as a person, but those two like really stand out to me, not just because they're recent, but they really, yeah, really did resonate with me.
Finally, Rick, after everything, from school friends in Downpatrick to now, 9 albums later, what does I still mean to you personally?
It means like it means the world to me. It's a weird one because, you know, it's like the music business is a very different place from when we started. We were lucky enough to start when the music business was awash with money, and you know, it was like the first, you know, first four records was like just a mad time. But to me, it feels like the longer I do this, the more I enjoy it. You know, and the more it means to me. It was like, I don't know. I mean, it's like it has been, you know, over 3 decades of my life. And it's just like it feels still feels like there's a lot to do, and it's like we still got that forward momentum. It's just who we are. I mean, it's like a yeah. It's been a great 33 or whatever years so far, and let's see. You know, let's see. It's weird 'cause I did turn. Yeah, maybe this is just me turning 50 and wigging out. I don't know, but it's like at that point, you know, I'm becoming conscious more of, you know, time. And it's just like, I turned 50. I'm like, you know what? The rest of my life is just a game now. And the game is, how long can I keep doing this? How long can I stay in shape to keep this band going? And that's what it means to me, you know what I mean? It's like I can't imagine a time when I'm not doing this. And yeah, there's point. I mean, I'm completely knackered at the minute. It's been an insane couple of months, and I could probably happily have a week off, but I'm still excited to where we go, and just like want to get out on the road, that you see how these songs are gonna go down, and just I think for me, life is just like it's about new experiences, it's about learning new stuff, and it's about and the vehicle that I'm doing that through is the band.
Rick, that's me done. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. I hope I didn't get too heavy at the end there. Excellent. Well, great talking to you, and I shall catch you in Belfast then.